Welcome to In Search for Wellness. Eden's Cellular Wellness Solution is presenting to you a story on carbohydrates. I have prepared a story about concerning our carbohydrates as food and how we can interact with the carbohydrates and develop a healthy carbohydrate culture. We have heard that in Kenya and also in Africa, carbohydrates form a very big portion of our diet. A lot of carbohydrates per year in tonnage or in kilogram is consumed in a country or even in individual families. And so we end up per year consuming a lot of carbohydrates, which is a very important constituent of our diet. We cannot say because carbohydrates makes me put on weight, I am not going to eat carbohydrates anymore. Carbohydrates is very important and needed in the cells for energy and also for growth. This slide presents an example of wholesome carbohydrates. Some carbohydrates that are consumed all over the world, and others are consumed regionally as they manifest or as they are produced by the plants for us in a wholesome state. And carbohydrates which are very good and provide good starches for our daily consumption. Here we have arrowroots. Arrowroots, as they are called, roots that grow deep in the soil. And the whole plant has to be uprooted to harvest an arrowroot. The starch in arrowroot is very, very, very good. It is very good because it is not broken down very easily. It is not digested quickly. It is not broken down quickly into glucose to shoot the blood sugar. And consumption of arrowroot as a starch source is good because it presents good sustenance of glucose in the blood. These are whole maize. Maize is greatly used in Africa and many other parts of the world for starches. Maize in his wholesome state and refined is also very good carbohydrate source because it provides, as a grain, it provides oils, it provides vitamins, it provides proteins, and it also has complex carbohydrates that break down very slowly. This is rice, consumed greatly in the world as a refined rice, but in essence, it's best to consume it unrefined. Potatoes, Irish potatoes are known. These are a type of legume. Legumes also provide starches, but they are greatly known for their protein content. Bananas are loved greatly all over the world in their ripe bananas because they provide glucose for immediate energy when they are ripened. But in other parts of the world, like in Kenya, we also bananas are used in their green states, green bananas. They are used as starch sources. Corn is used as a vegetable in very many parts of the world, but we know that corn also provides starches. It also provides wholesome starch. And corn, like in popcorn, it is popcorn is a very healthy snack. So here, this diagram, it shows us that it is telling us it's good to know our wholesome carbohydrates that support wellness. It is in fact very good to know how to choose our wholesome carbohydrates which will support wellness. In a modern life system where most of our starches is coming, we get most of our starches from the supermarket and most times in the refined states. It is important to know our wholesome carbohydrates so that we can be able to make the correct selection. This is In Search for Wellness, presenting to you the story of our carbohydrates, the story about our carbohydrates, and how our carbohydrates interact with our body cells to influence our wellness. In this section, we'll look at the danger of high refined starch diet. The danger of high refined starch diet. We have looked at the previous section about what refined starches are, and how refined flours have come about. And in this section, as we look at the danger of high refined starch diet, we will ask our question, does high starch diet support wellness? Does high starch diet support wellness? You know, in the regions, like we have said, the regions of Africa and many other so-called third world countries, when people think of food, there might have been conditions that food is the large amount of carbohydrate portion. That per sitting, one may need to eat a large carbohydrate portion to satisfy the mind and the stomach that one has really eaten a good meal. So people mainly think of food based on large carbohydrate portion per sitting, that per every sitting, one will need to consume a high amount of carbohydrates. That is what constitutes a good and satisfying and a meal which fills up the stomach. The other thing, people are also conditioned that it is only when they feel that the stomach is full after eating, when they feel that the stomach is full, that is when they have eaten enough food. And then someone may feel, because they did not feel like they have eaten much, they feel like they did not eat enough. They feel like they have not eaten enough. And these two are really dangerous conditioning. These are really very dangerous mind conditioning, especially when we have to deal with a high refined starch diet. Because one, if you give a person like this one in a plate, a medium-sized plate, you give this person a lot of, let's say, bean sauce or gram sauce or lentil sauce or meat sauce with a good portion of vegetables, and then put a small amount of white starch food, you put a small amount of the carbohydrate portion, that person looks at that food and immediately say, this is not enough for me. If you can't give me enough food, you better take it and eat it yourself. Somebody may feel that that is an insult. By serving them such little carbohydrate portion, you have not served them enough food, and already they tell their minds that I can't be satisfied with this. This is not enough. And so this is what we are saying, that these two points here are dangerous points, are dangerous mild conditioning as far as high refined diet is concerned. Again, obviously, if you serve a person like that, a person who thinks that way, with a small portion of ugari or small portion of white, with enough portion of protein sauce or protein stew and enough portion of vegetables, that person will feel that this food cannot fill my stomach. This food cannot fill my stomach. It is not enough. And a person like that one can only feel satisfied when they eat a large carbohydrate portion. A large carbohydrate portion, which goes and sits in the stomach like a big stone, like a big weight. Only then will that person feel that and agree that they are satisfied and they have eaten enough. However, we know that today, like we have seen that our ancestors, our forefathers, our parents and our grandparents and great-grandparents, although they ate a high-starch diet, they did not fall sick and they lived long lives. They lived long lives and they did not have problems with the diabetes or obesity or cravings or even cancer. And so we ask ourselves, why is it today we have these problems and we still seem to be eating high starch diet just like our parents? But the difference here is because our high starch diet is also high refined starch. It's a high refined starch diet, while their diet was mainly unrefined starches. And this high refined starch provides or releases high glucose into the blood per meal. For example, if someone per sitting maybe consumes almost half a kilo of ugari or half a kilo of 500 grams of rice or 700 grams of rice, that it will be digested very quickly, and within a short time, a lot of glucose is released into the blood at the same time. A lot of glucose is released into the blood within a very short time. And so that's what you hear that people say, that there is a spike. You know, there is a sharp rise in the amount of glucose sugar after a high starch, refined starch meal. This high sugar spike, this high glucose spike in the blood is followed by a demand for a lot of insulin, too much insulin. The insulin hormone, a lot of insulin hormone is produced from the pancreas. So a high spike in sugar after a high refined starch meal also is followed by a high spike in hormone insulin. Hormone insulin try to mop up all this glucose from the blood. In a normal person, and person who does not suffer from diabetes, there is a type 1 diabetes of people who are born with diabetes. But there is the type 2 diabetes, which is a maturity onset diabetes. And today, many people in this country are suffering from type 2 diabetes, which is maturity onset diabetes. Maybe it started when somebody was 30 years old or 20 years old, 40 years old. Most time at 50 years old, many people are entering into that status of maturity onset diabetes, where the hormone insulin, where this insulin sugar control mechanism, this sugar control mechanism is no longer working. It was working before, maybe for 40 years, but all of a sudden, after tests have been made, someone realizes, and the doctor realizes that a person is diagnosed with type 2 diabetes, high blood sugar, especially fasting sugar, which is the sugar levels in the morning before somebody has taken anything. After analysis, after tests have been done, they are found to be have high blood sugar beyond the required range. And in such a situation, it means that this regulation mechanism of insulin glucose regulation mechanism is no longer working. So we are saying that this high sugar that released into the bloodstream will also be followed by too much insulin hormone released from the pancreas. Our diagram here shows us the position of the organ pancreas. The pancreas is situated just as the food leaves the stomach. This is the stomach. This is the stomach. There is a bed here as the stomach joins into the small intestines down there. And this section is called the duodenum. So the pancreas is situated at this bend. It's situated at this bend, and the pancreas is very much also involved in digestion. You can see here it is connected to another organ here. There is another organ connected to this duodenum. This is the gallbladder. This is the gallbladder, which stores the bile. The bile are salts that help the whole system digest fats. And the bile is produced by the pancreas. There is also pancreatic juice that is produced by this organ. It is very much involved in digestion in the small intestine. This organ is very, very, very important. It's very, very important in the digestion of fats. You find that if this organ fails, the digestion may not be completed, and the digestion of fats may not be completed. And you see, if it is not functioning properly, it will also not be able to produce enough hormone insulin. So when we look at this, we see the importance of this organ to our general health, that by our own carbohydrate food culture, our own modern carbohydrate food culture, we may be able to protect our organs. We are talking about the danger of high refined starch diet. And in the last slide, we looked at how high refined starch diet, after digestion, how it spikes the blood sugar. And this high spike of blood sugar is followed by an equivalent amount of insulin hormone from the pancreas. Now, when we imagine for maybe a span of 20 years, a span of 30 years, a span of 40 years, a person has been consuming a high refined starch diet. Most likely, you take 2 meals, lunchtime and supper, or maybe breakfast and supper, high amounts of high refined starch diet, which continuously spikes the blood sugar level very high and calls out for a high demand of insulin production. we realize that when this happens on daily basis, we can imagine the amount of insulin produced in 365 days in a year. You can also multiply further and see how much insulin you have been produced in 40 years, in 30 years. What happens? What is the impact on the organ? What is the impact on the organ pancreas? Because of this high activity of insulin production. Such high insulin demand on a daily basis, per sitting, per meal, per day, per year, indicates it overworks the pancreas, And again, what happens is the muscle cells become insensitive to hormone insulin. Because of too much production of insulin per day for a year, for years, it means that a person's internal medium or inside the body, the cells are exposed and the muscles are exposed to very high levels of insulin, and the muscles become insensitive to insulin. When this happens, it means that even after eating a high starch diet and spiking the sugar in the blood, it means that the insulin will not command the muscles. The insulin will not command the muscles to take the excess sugar. And so the sugar remains high in the blood. And this is when somebody is diagnosed with type 2 diabetes, because after 2 hours after the meal, the blood sugar is still found to be beyond 6, to be beyond the level, the higher range of the normal range. Again, what happens in the body because of this high refined sugar diet? A roller coaster pattern of blood sugar and insulin is developed because of eating high refined starch for many years, every day for many years. It means that now the person's sugar metabolism becomes the roller coaster pattern, the roller coaster of high sugar, high insulin produced, sugar drops, then the person demands for more high sugar, more insulin, sugar drops, and so you find that the person pattern of sugar in the blood is high, low, high, and drop, high, and a drop. And this is what we are calling the roller coaster pattern. This is a pattern which is developed in the blood system, in the blood or in the body, because of consuming high refined starch diet. Normally, this would not be the normal metabolism pattern of starches, because if someone consumes wholesome starches, if someone consumes the wholesome starches which don't spike the sugar, it means less insulin will be produced. And then the person is able to maintain a near normal level of blood sugar in the blood. And that one is now the normal kind of sugar metabolism that should be expected, that even naturally and biochemically, the body expects. We are looking at the story of carbohydrates, the story of our carbohydrates, which is our major food. We all love our food and we love our carbohydrates. And so we are looking at the story of carbohydrates because it forms a major and very important part of our food. And here we are looking right now at the danger of high refined starches. Does answering the question, does a high starch diet, high refined starch diet, does it support wellness? Does it support wellness? Already we have looked in the two slides that we have looked at the danger of high refined starch diet. So we have just talked, this is the kind of graph. This is the kind of graph we see when we spike the sugar high, insulin is produced, it comes down, somebody is looking for more sugar, eats something, shoots the sugar up again, then insulin is produced, it goes down. So the pattern goes in this kind of roller coaster pattern. It's a spike up, spike down, up, down. And this is a very uncomfortable way of living because somebody keeps craving for something. You are feeling you need something to eat after 2 hours. You need a cake, you need a biscuit, you need a mandazi, you need a sweet banana. You are looking for something that will give you quick sugar, that you get your brain up and running once again. But this is what doctors and even research scientists, they have told us this is not a healthy sugar metabolism. This is a sugar metabolism established because of high refined starch diet. And we call it out of the norm sugar metabolism. So this high refined starch diet brings about cravings for sugar foods and indulgences. Because of these spikes, somebody keeps craving for something sweet, for something starchy, something that you give them a quick kick of sugar. And because of this craving, a person may find that you are indulging in cake, you are indulging in ice creams, you are indulging in sodas, you are indulging in chocolates, you are indulging in energy drinks, these things that you are indulging in ripe bananas, the things that you give you a fast and quick kick of sugar. And we can call it a dangerous out of the norm sugar metabolism. So when one is in a situation like this one, I myself for many years, I was in this kind of a situation, but I never thought it was a metabolic problem until my body started failing in one way or another. And by the miraculous intervention of God, I was able to get a book that led me to the new path of finding truth about my metabolism. And so this kind of roller coaster behavior, it also influences somebody's behavior. This kind of metabolism, it leads to obesity and an unhealthy food culture, because we see the excess sugars which are removed from the blood by the insulin may be converted to fats. And so this kind of behavior will lead to obesity and also an unhealthy food culture, unnecessary large amount of insulin. So this high refined diet for so many years, it also exposes the body to high insulin production. And this is not a healthy scenario. Biochemically, it is not a healthy scenario. It does not bring wellness. Overall, if this high refined starch diet continues for many years, you'll find that people start having various kind of complaints in their wellness. We are still going on with the story of the carbohydrates, which is the story of our food. We have seen that in this part of the world, in Africa and in our country, that carbohydrate plays a very, very important role towards our wellness. and we can no longer ignore our carbohydrates. And here I'm saying thank you very much for your participation. Thank you for your participation in the story of our carbohydrates as it influences wellness in our bodies. This story may help us enter into a place of carbohydrate metabolism that leads to wellness. I trust that this section has been helpful. Developing a healthy carbohydrate culture is an important step in one's journey to wellness. I wish you all the best in your journey to wellness. This story has been created by Eden's Cellular Wellness Solutions.